side. Thanks.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you can see me. I'm quite short, and the podium is quite tall, so I apologize for that in advance. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue. Mon nom c'est Geneviève. I'm with Capital Pride. I'm the co-chair of the board of directors. Thank you. Happy Pride. Joyeuse fierté à tout le monde. So for those of you who don't know, which I'm hoping is nobody, but today is our parade and our street festival. So I'm really hoping that folks will turn out to that after this event. But I wanted to take a quick moment to welcome everyone and to welcome the representatives who are here with us today for this incredible announcement that is about to take place. Some of the work that we've been doing at Capital Pride has been in large part due to federal funding, and so it's a great honor to be able to be here with you today and to be able to speak to folks about that. So if I can just take a moment to highlight some of the advocacy work that we've done recently. We were involved in the blood ban campaign and ending the blood ban, so thank you. A lot of work that needed to be done, and we're glad that we finally got to push for that and end the blood ban as we know it. So some of that progress is being made, and we hope to continue to see progress in all of the advocacy work that we do. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you so much, Geneviève. Bonjour, hello, and welcome everyone. And thank you so much for joining us this morning on Capital Pride Parade Day. This is Pride season. It's been so incredible so far with all kinds of in-person and virtual events across the country, celebrating and marking the incredible contributions of those working to advance the 2SLGBTQ+ community. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. It's a great privilege for me to be here today as we mark an important milestone in our government's commitment to improving equality for the 2SLGBTQI+ communities. Over the past years, the Government of Canada has consulted and worked alongside many diverse communities to better understand the daily realities and experiences of 2QI+ people in Canada. Today's announcement aims to create a more equitable Canada for 2SLGBTQI+ communities for present and for future generations. So without further delay, I would now like to invite Elder Verna McGregor from the First Nation Algonquin community of Kitigan, Zibi, Anishinaabeg for our opening prayer. Elder Verna, over to you.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here on this wonderful Sunday. I was with the Bingham Cup last week, which is the 2SLGBTQ+. I'm sorry if I missed some letters in there, but I thought it was wonderful. There was this camaraderie with the people coming together. But also when I was driving home, I was thinking, I said, why do I love it so much too? Then it came to mind that we as Indigenous people too were once also this oppression, you know, and not accepted too as well for where we are. So, and now I'm very honored to be here today too, because this announcement too is on a step two as well for us, everyone, this inclusivity to be included now. And why I always talk about Ottawa as a confluence, because we were known for the birch bark canoe as an Anishinaabe Algonquin. And one of the teachings of the canoe is that you honor everybody's journey here. It's not only just balance, but you honor everybody's journey. So that's why this announcement is important, because also too as well, the significance of Ottawa is that confluence of the rivers, and that was our highway. But the confluence too represents the medicine wheel, and everybody belongs in the circle. So on that note, I'm going to just say a little quick prayer, and I thank you for the tobacco, because that's part of protocol too. And I have my feathers, and I say, miigwech. Merci. Thank you. On Jane Gashkito, Chama, Dose, Conche, Nongum, Shuen Mishnon and Abigus. We don't go cooking up a matza chicken as well, Conche. Chimino Pamatza, watch Chuana Key, watch and Abigus. Conscious Quatnegue de Simon, Kego Gajeman, a Doshich Conan Hodgkushnegue de Simon. We don't go cooking up me, and we say, Miigwetches, thank you 4 times to honor the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 colors of people on this earth, and everybody really, because everybody belongs here. So, miigwech, 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 miigwech.
Thank you so much, Elder Verna, for those inspiring words. And now I would like to invite Mona Fortier, President of the Treasury Board and Member of Parliament for Ottawa-Vanier. Minister Fortier, thank you so much for hosting us here in Ottawa-Vanier today, and the floor is yours.
Merci, Jenna, Kwishiba, bonjour, good morning, and happy Pride, everyone. And as the Member of Parliament for Ottawa-Vanier and President of the Treasury Board, it's my pleasure to welcome you all here today for this very important announcement. And also, I want to acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered here today is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you to end off Capital Pride and to be joined by so many friendly faces, local leaders, elected officials, members of the 2SLGBTQI+ communities, Ottawa small business owners, and everyone here. And I also want to recognize my friends and colleagues, Jenna Sudds, Member of Parliament for Canada Carleton, Yasir Naqvi, Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre, Anita Vandenbelt from Ottawa West Nepean, Marie-France Lalonde d'Orléans, and of course the Honourable Marci Ian, Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth. Notre grand champion, notre Premier ministre Justin Trudeau. Et je ne peux pas vous dire à quel point je suis heureuse que nous soyons tous ici pour célébrer la Semaine de la fierté dans la capitale et toutes les communautés 2SLGBTQI+ du Canada. Et ce fut une semaine remplie d'événements et de célébrations, et je tiens à remercier toutes celles et tous ceux qui ont travaillé sans relâche pour que tout se passe bien dans notre communauté. Puis un fier chapeau à Geneviève Culverson, coprésidente, et toute ton équipe. Merci pour tout ce que vous avez fait. Vous savez, c'est un témoignage non seulement du travail acharné qui a été consacré à ces événements, mais aussi la résilience et la ténacité de l'ensemble de la communauté 2SLGBTQI+, et de la communauté de la région de la capitale nationale. You know, Capital Pride is truly unique in the most amazing ways, bringing together people from all over in our beautiful city to honor and celebrate 2SLGBTQI+ community. Over the past few months, Pride celebrations have taken place from coast to coast to coast. Whether big or small, the message of Pride parades remain the same. 2SLGBTQI plus communities in all their diversity have a place in Canada and make our country much better. Right? And as we've been saying, Pride is more than a week of celebration or events. It's a movement that honors the past, celebrates the present, and prepares for the future. And we gather here today because of the breakthroughs achieved by trailblazers from the past and those who continue the hard work to break glass ceilings. And I'm proud to share that there are so many activists and leaders in the 2SLGBTQI plus community here in Ottawa that are present with us today. And I want to thank you all for your tireless work and advocacy in making sure that our community is more inclusive and diverse. Et qu'il s'agisse d'œuvres d'art créatives disséminées dans toute la ville, de poésie orale ou de contes, la façon dont vous enrichissez tous Ottawa en partageant les histoires de la communauté est remarquable. Les contes, l'art et le militantisme ont fait progresser l'éducation et la sensibilisation tout en célébrant le droit de vivre librement, peu importe qui vous êtes ou qui vous aimez. Et nous savons que les organismes et les personnes ici présentes jouent un rôle essentiel dans nos collectivités. Ils offrent des programmes, fournissent des services éducatifs et sont là pour ceux et celles qui en ont plus le besoin. Et même en dépit des difficultés rencontrées ces dernières années, vos organisations, nos organisations, se sont adaptées et ont surmonté les obstacles afin de pouvoir continuer à servir les personnes comme vous savez, qui ont le plus besoin de vous. And I'm proud that Ottawa plays such an integral role towards building an inclusive Canada that stands alongside 2SLGBTQI plus communities. And the announcement today echoes your work and honors your stories. And it's a testament of your unwavering resilience and a reminder that together we can overcome nearly all obstacles. Now, I would like to invite my good friend, my favorite boss, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, to say a few words. You know, he has been a true champion of 2SLGBTQI plus rights and has fought hard to make everyone feel they belong and have a place in Canada and in our communities. And there's much work to be done, but you have paved the way for so many. Thank you. Monsieur Trudeau.
Bonjour tout le monde. Bonne fierté. Happy Pride. Merci Mona pour cette introduction. Merci Jenna pour tout ton travail. Verna, thank you for those words of welcome onto traditional territory. It is so important that we recognize the caretakers of the land, past, present, and future. Geneviève, merci pour tout ton leadership. Merci à tous mes amis collègues ici. Il y a du gros travail à faire et Marci, je suis tellement content que tu sois là pour le faire. To begin with, I just want to take a moment alongside all Canadians to reflect on our friends in Pakistan who are suffering through horrific floods right now. The devastating impact that these are having on people across the country is something we're all watching with sorrow and support. Canada will continue to provide support through the UN and through the Red Cross. Comme tant de Canadiens, je pense aux sinistrés et aux inondations dévastatrices au Pakistan. Le Canada va continuer d'être là par le biais d'organismes comme les Nations Unies et la Croix-Rouge. Mais nous avons tous une pensée dans cette belle journée ici à Ottawa à ceux qui font face à des moments extrêmement difficiles à l'autre côté de la planète. Can I tell you how great it's been to see Pride events coming back in person again this year? Just being crowded into this room right now and celebrating is a great, great feeling. Pride is a fantastic tradition and a truly meaningful one for all Canadians. It's about fully embracing something that's so Canadian, being proud of who we are, of what we are, of whom we love, and celebrating that and celebrating each other in the fullest way that highlights what makes such a vibrant community. Since day one, our government has been committed to protecting the rights of two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and additional sexuality and gender diverse people. That's why I'm so excited today to announce a historic first, the launch of Canada's first ever 2SLGBTQI+ action plan. This is a whole-of-government plan that will guide our ongoing work to fight discrimination, to break down barriers, to advance rights, and to build a future where everyone in Canada is truly free to be who they are and love whom they love. On a travaillé avec des leaders, des chercheurs et des organismes communautaires pour que ce plan réponde aux besoins des Canadiens. Et on va investir 100 millions de dollars sur 5 ans. Une grande... Ouais, on peut applaudir 100 millions de dollars. Une grande partie de ces fonds, 75 millions de dollars, va aller directement à des organismes communautaires parce que c'est là où se fait le véritable travail de soutien et d'entraide. The strength and the resilience of your community should inspire everyone. We see it in your advocacy, your outreach to vulnerable people, and the work you do every day to make your community more inclusive and diverse in every possible way. Our government will never stop fighting to protect and support your rights and freedoms. 5 years ago, we passed legislation to prohibit discrimination on the basis of gender identity or expression. We've welcomed thousands of refugees fleeing persecution because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Et cette année, on a adopté une loi pour mettre fin à ce qui était appelé la thérapie de conversion, qui était en réalité une pratique cruelle et dangereuse. Et je suis... Et je suis toujours très content de voir le drapeau de la fierté flotter fièrement sur la colline du Parlement. On sait qu'il reste encore bien du travail à faire et grâce à ce nouveau plan d'action, on va continuer d'avancer ensemble. Lots more work to do, but we have together made tremendous strides here in Canada, which is important. But as important as well as we've seen rights moving backwards in many parts of the world, some closer than we'd like to admit. We need to continue to stand up to show what a truly positive, inclusive, strong society looks like. And that means, that means everyone working together and calling out what we see and showing what a truly inclusive society looks like. And that's why before I wrap today, I want to take a moment to address, in part, the video we saw this weekend of the Deputy Prime Minister being subjected to some extremely disturbing harassment and threats. And this is not an isolated incident. Sadly, this is something we're seeing more and more of. Certainly, members of this community have seen it. But we're seeing increasingly people in public life, people in positions of responsibility, particularly women, racialized Canadians, people of minority or different community groups being targeted almost because of the increasing strength of your voices, of your positions, of the impact you're having around the world and around our country. We're seeing a backlash. And we've seen it, first of all, over the past many years. Anytime a woman speaks up on social media, she is so often subject to harassment and toxicity that we actually seeing her rights and her voice and her freedom of expression diminished. We need more women and racialized Canadians and diverse communities to be strong voices in politics, in media, where we're seeing reporters increasingly getting attacked for calling out hatred and indifference and discrimination. We have to ask ourselves what kind of country we are, what kind of country we want to be. La discrimination, la haine, l'intimidation de femmes racisées, de membres de communautés défavorisées, de minoritaires, sont en train de plus en plus d'être attaquées dans la sphère publique, surtout quand elles osent exercer du pouvoir ou du service envers la communauté. Nous avons des réflexions importantes à faire en tant que société sur comment nous allons réagir en tant que société, quel genre de monde et de pays on veut bâtir, quel message on donne aux générations futures. Je suis très content d'avoir des membres de mon conseil jeunesse du Premier ministre ici. Merci d'être ici. Mais on est dans un moment où on a besoin de leadership responsable pour d'être là, pour dire non, que c'est pas acceptable dans notre démocratie, c'est pas acceptable au Canada, et d'être là pour repousser contre la haine. Threats, violence, intimidation of any kind are always unacceptable, and this kind of cowardly behavior threatens and undermines our democracy and our values of openness and respect upon which Canada was built. As leaders, we need to call this out and take a united stance against it, because no matter who you are, who you love, the color of your skin, how you pray, where you're from, your gender, you deserve respect, and you deserve to live in peace without fear of threats or violence. And I can tell you that I, our colleagues on this stage, and indeed our government will always fight for this, particularly true today as we celebrate Pride in our capital city, but every day as well. Canada is an accepting place. That's what Canada is about, and it's a huge part of what makes us all so proud to be Canadian. So let us make sure we are stepping up, that we are not just watching, that we are standing up actively every day in our ways with the strengths that each of us have to fight against hatred, discrimination, and reject the fear that is creeping into our society. Mais surtout aujourd'hui, on célèbre. Bonne fierté tout le monde. Et je veux maintenant passer la parole à la ministre Ian. Marci, please, come on up.
Prime Minister, Prime Minister, this is our youth council. This is our youth council. Love you so much. Love you so much. Prime Minister, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your empathy. To my beloved colleagues who are here today, fellow MPs, Jenna, I couldn't ask for a better partner. Thank you. Albert, Tyler, Genevieve, Elder, Verna, thank you for starting us off in a good way. Thank you so much. And of course, to all of you, I look across this room and I see so many friends. Oh my gosh, Doug, hi Faye. So many friends, activists, allies. Hi, Cam. I want to, as I look at you, Cam, I want to give a shout out to my team. My Chief of Staff, Chris, his son, Z, is over here. It's the team that you don't see that is working so diligently and so hard behind the scenes. I'm biased, yes, but I've got the best team ever. The best team ever. So thank you. Love you. We got here. We got here. So being afraid to hold your partner's hand when walking around a city. Just last week, a friend of mine said, Marci, I'm not so sure that I can dance with my partner in public because I don't know. I don't feel safe. A friend of mine said that last week. Scared that someone will see which bathroom you choose to use. Flinching when a car drives by and somebody yells a slur in your direction. Terrified of being cut off from your closest friends and families. This community knows all of those hate-fueled things all too well, and this is 2022. But you have stood, and you have risen, and you have protested, and you advocated, and with your help, we're here. I have to tell you, I've been thinking a lot about kindness and the fact that government can't legislate that. I wish we could. I wish we could legislate a whole bunch of empathy too, but we can't do that. And I want to point out that there is a stark difference between tolerance and acceptance. As Member of Parliament, proud Member of Parliament for Toronto Centre, which of course includes the historic gay village, I have seen firsthand how activism and advocacy come together in a real way and spark real change. But I've also seen the need for dedicated supports for the community. So the Prime Minister said that I'm the minister responsible for moving the needle forward for the 2SLGBTQI+ community, for Canadians. And so I wanted to listen, wanted to continue listening. That's what learning means to me, and that means not just to friends and not just to people in my community, but across the country. I wanted to hear from people, listen deeply, and hear from them in their own words. Listen well means acting well. So in Montreal recently, I spoke to a young Caribbean immigrant, completely cut off from her family, back home after coming out as trans and struggling so hard just to find shelter. She was also in an abusive situation, and she told me that she was left alone in a new country with no support because her family said, no. If that's who you're going to be, no. In Vancouver, I heard from a South Asian woman, lovely woman who had put together a beautiful pride party. I was dancing up a storm. And I took some time to chat with her, and she shared with me that she had been excommunicated from her family and friends when she came out. So instead, she found her own family, a sense of family and friendship within the local lesbian community. She found her own family. A couple of years ago, back in the old days when I was a reporter, I was on assignment and I visited Iqaluit, and I met with an amazing 2S leader, a youth leader, but they were so much more than that. And they explained to me how in their community they were revered. They explained to me that 2S people lead. They do, don't they? Yeah. That even adults would come to them for advice. They were leading in the local council. They were trying to change policy. They were proud to be 2S. And they explained that the closet came when colonization came. I always say that my greatest teachers are my youngest teachers, and shout out again to the Youth Council. But also, my own kids, and that young leader a couple years ago taught me so much. So that brings us to today's historic announcement of Canada's first ever I want to punch that first ever 2SLGBTQI plus action plan supported by an investment of $100 million. To all of those people, and there's so many of you here who are fighting to be heard, to be seen, to be accepted, those fighting on their behalf, this is for you. This is for the people who I mentioned before who were discarded by their family, maybe friends, after they came out, who were said they don't belong. This is for everybody trying to live their truth in rural communities where they feel isolated. And when everybody knows everybody, it's hard. This is for the Black queer people who are fighting every single day to just justify their place in this country, and the trans women, Faye, the trans women, who are afraid sometimes we've talked about that, to walk home alone in the dark. This is for you. But to get to this first ever action plan, we needed to conduct really extensive engagement and process. And in 2020 and 2021, we received more than 25,000, that is not an insignificant number, responses to a national online survey. 25,000 of you said we want to be a part of this. 100 written submissions from organizations talking about how they see things, how we could greater serve diverse communities. It was roundtable discussions across the country with community leaders, with organizations, with researchers, trying to gather all of that information. And the resounding answer was that they needed more direct supports to offer program in keeping communities safe, to keep spaces open, to continue educating the wider public. Because again, we can't legislate kindness. Wish we could. So this is exactly why 75% of the funding in this plan is going directly to community organizations, directly there. So I'm going to break it down a little more for you. $75 million for community organizations, $40 million in new capacity building support, $35 million in new project-focused support, $8 million, almost $8 million for data collection. And I want to stop on the data collection and disaggregated data for a moment. That's really important because we need to know exactly what is happening. We need to know this so that we can serve well. We need to know where the gaps are, and data does this. Another $5.6 million is going to develop an awareness campaign. I have a mind to call it kindness. And it's going to focus on this work, and it's going to get out there to the broader public. I cannot change hearts and minds, but we're going to try. Finally, the 2SLGBTQI plus Secretariat is getting a permanent investment of $11.7 million, and that's important. Because the Secretariat, and thank you so much for your work, the Secretariat listens closely to queer organizations and leaders and activists and is able to draw on their leadership, and that is really important. Good morning, James. All the friends. I'm long-winded, so I need to get to this and wrap some things up. I want to talk about another important piece of today's announcement, and that's acknowledging the compounded intersectional factors that have not always made Black queer communities feel included. That friend that I talked about a little while ago who said, I'm not sure I can dance with my partner. Black, queer. That involvement in the larger pride movement has to happen, and we have to do it better. And that has led to the creation of dedicated resources and support. So to look further into these factors, our government intends to work with Tyler and the Enchanté Network. So many of you are familiar with the amazing work. To explore opportunities and determine the best approach to strengthen the Black 2SLGBTQI+ movement in Canada. And I know Tyler will have a lot more to say in just a couple of minutes, and I want to thank him publicly for all of his work and his team's work. Albert, you're coming. I'm not even going to steal your thunder, friend. I'm not even going to steal your thunder. But I will end on this. It's a first ever. It's well thought out. There's a lot more to do, but we're here. And that means building. That means adding. That means listening to you for more direction as we go forward. That means evergreen. That means it can change. That means we can add it, we can subtract. That means we're taking our cues from you. That's what this means. It's up to each of us to do our part to make this happen. And we've been doing that. We've been working together. Because, as I said, these changes won't just happen with legislation. It's through conversations that we have with people we know. It's about not letting those slurs slide when we're in a group and somebody says something maybe a little uncomfortable and we just let it go. There's no letting it go. It's about having the tough conversations. And believe me, I speak from a personal perspective. It's about having the tough conversations and taking a stand. So to all of you, to all of those fighting to be heard, to be seen, to be accepted in your homes, in your communities, and in this country, this beautiful country, this is for you. Bon fierté, happy Pride. Thank you. Albert, my friend, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Ian, as well as Prime Minister being present today on this very important announcement. I was at the 1990 gathering in Manitoba where the Two-Spirit name was introduced to us. And it's kind of been a confusing process for the larger queer community about why we had to broaden the acronym. And as you know, it's broadened quite a bit since then. But for us at that time, we began a gathering in 1988 in Minneapolis. And it was when we were confronting the reality of the HIV pandemic on Indigenous, gay, and bisexual men. And literally our backs were against the wall because we had nowhere to go, certainly not back to our communities. So we had a meeting, a cross-border meeting in Minneapolis, and we decided to meet again the following year, but on the land. And so I'm very proud to say that this month, the 35th Annual International Two-Spirit Gathering was held in Montana. So we're kind of one of the longest standing liberation movements in North America as queer Indigenous people. And the name has slowly progressed from the back of the acronym to the front. And it's taken 30 years to do that. But it is about our spirituality, not principally our gender or our sexuality. It is about the spirit of our connection to our spiritual world, the spiritual world of our ancestors. Also, our inalienable rights as queer Indigenous people to the spirit of our land, the love of our families, our siblings, our parents and our grandparents, and the freedom to always return home, right? That's the spirit I like to think that it references, right? Inalienable, inherent, and civil rights as Indigenous people on these lands. Minister Ian talked about intersectionality, and of course, We know with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the recent National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls, that intersects with Canadian society in general. In Manitoba, we began the saying, we are all treaty people. And certainly we are, whether you're a newcomer, Indigenous, or a mainstream Canadian, we are all treaty. We are bound by those treaties. And we are committed to learning what is the meaning behind those treaties. So, you know, with this new National Action Plan, it will intersect with the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry for Manitoba, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls, the Marriage Act in Canada, because we have the Indian Act, and any act that Canada puts forward will affect all of the acts, including the Indian Act. And I'm glad to say, since that occurred, there has been no pushback around same-sex marriage in First Nations or Inuit or Métis communities. So it is, again, a work of progress around human rights awareness, but also in international rights, as we know that democracy is under threat around the world. And Canada stands as that bastion against that fascism that we face. I was in the first Pride March in Winnipeg in 1987, and some of us were afraid. We were afraid of violence. We were afraid of losing our job. We were afraid of being out. So some of those people wore paper bags on their heads with eye holes, the amount of that fear. And I was at the last one this summer, and it's the last one I'm going to walk. I'm going to ride in a pink convertible next year, I think. But I made a point of walking this one because when you were on the street, you're claiming your space. You're seeing your city from a different vantage point, from a different point of view. You're seeing it as a taxpayer, as a citizen, as a rightful citizen of our nation. And we always need to reclaim that space to remind us that we're still here. We're here. Right? We are citizens of this democracy. During the issue that happened on Parliament this spring, I was called by the media, and they asked me if I wanted to do an online interview, and I said yes. And I had great concern because not many people were talking against that. The Freedom Convoy, or Freedom Cowboys, as I call them. And I agreed, and this is what I said. I said, you know, during World War II, my uncle went to Germany to fight against fascism. He was 19 years old, and he was wounded. He came back to Canada and died shortly thereafter, and I never had the opportunity to meet him. But the freedom that I have as a gay man in this country is what he fought for. And I will never, deny that. His sacrifice, his blood was spilled for my freedom today in the 21st century. And we always have to remember that. And I said, I don't need other people to fight for my freedom. My uncle fought for my freedom, and I'm going to live that freedom in his memory. So just in closing, I do have a gift for the Prime Minister and our elder, and it is about the intersectionality of the commemoration of Indian residential schools and the damage it had on Indigenous people and the psychology and Indigenous people, and the imposition of the binary gender identity on Indigenous peoples. So this year I printed up this T-shirt, and it says, "Every Two-Spirit child matters." Because Two-Spirit people were in those schools. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, and we have to acknowledge the type of oppression they also experienced in that environment. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Albert. It is now my pleasure to invite Tyler Boyce, the Executive Director of the Enchanté Network.
Let's hear it again. It's Pride. I want to first and foremost thank the Honourable Prime Minister for being here. It means something. I want to thank Minister Marci for all of the work that you do, for the open communication, and for really demonstrating what a partnership between government and civil society can do. As a society, we can do many different things. And one of the most powerful things that we can do is decide to do things differently. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's something that we can do if we actually come together and think about what it means to harness collective power. At the Enchanté Network, we're Canada's largest network of queer and trans organizations. And before our network, there really wasn't that piece that was connecting this movement from coast to coast to coast. So what that produced was an environment where folks were able to come and celebrate Pride and feel something that we can't always articulate. People come to Pride from all over the world, allies, folks within the community, and we feel something when we're there. That's the innovation, that's the creativity, that's the power. And at the Enchanté Network, we call that movement building, and that's what we're in the business of. So today I was thinking, what can I possibly say? I went through so many different emotions. I was listening to the wonderful words shared before me, and just had emotion flowing through my body. And I think what I actually do want to talk about is what comes after the action plan. So that spirit of innovation, that spirit of creativity, this action plan will be a springboard. And I'm speaking particularly to the members of the Enchanté Network in this room, to folks that are part of our communities, folks that we live this when we walk through the streets, when we decide to have a fun night out with our friends, when we're thinking about family planning, when we're coming out to our parents or choosing not to come out to our parents. I'm speaking to you. This action plan will be a moment for us to launch what we already know is deep within ourselves and create a very different future moving forward. So I want to thank every single activist in this room. I want to take a moment to recognize that there are so many people who, in my community, didn't live long enough to see this moment because of the ways that we've been abandoned, whether it was during police brutality or whether it was during the HIV/AIDS crisis that is still ongoing to this day. This is for you. This is for us. And I want to give a big round of applause to every single activist that chose to show up and be here today. I often say this to my staff. We're not bound by our sexual orientation, by our gender identity, by our gender expression. We're bound by something so much deeper than that. We're bound by what happens when we come together. And sometimes it is trauma that brings us together. Sometimes it is a shift that brings us together. We're all experiencing that shift right now in rising hate crimes against queer and trans communities. We're seeing that particularly affecting racialized communities. And I want us to remember that as we build forward, we always need to look backwards. This movement, the reason that I'm speaking to you and that we're gathered here today, came from Black and Latinx trans women that decided to lay it all on the line for us. So as we step forward into this moment, it will be important for us to honor that work. And Minister Ian mentioned the work that the Enchanté Network is going to be doing to help lay the groundwork for what it means to support Black, queer, and trans communities from coast to coast to coast. We would encourage you to stay involved with that movement. I would actually put a call to action forward to say, get in the business of movement building beyond Pride. And I'll leave you with these words. You showed up today, and we're going to continue to show up 365 days a year. This is a moment. This is a springboard, and I'm so excited for where it brings us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tyler, and thank you for the incredible work that you're doing. With that, I would now like to invite Elder McGregor for our closing prayer. Oh, okay. Okay. So we'll carry on. Okay. I believe Elder McGregor had to step away. So with that, I would like to thank... Oh, she's back. She's back. Excellent.
I just need some wind.
Fair. It is warm up here.
Water.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Tobacco. I love the T-shirt that Albert gave me, and it was like the every Two-Spirit child matters. Yeah. And when I was thinking too as well, there's the similarities too with us. Part of that is with this colonization, we have this historical trauma. And when I was listening to the speakers, I was thinking about this historical trauma and this thing about hypervigilance. So maybe this funding too also raises awareness on that too, because we do have this too. And hypervigilance is waiting for the shoe to drop. And that's what happens, and we experience that too. So it's our commonalities that bring us together too. It's not just our differences divide us. So not only say miigwech kakina honje gidon nezonje, we do kwa kakina pamaze jekena bigas conscious kwat nigwede simin kego. I just can't know squish nigwede simin shwen mishnon me. Again, we go, miigwech, 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 miigwech. And I just said, thank you, Creator, for allowing us to come together. And please help everyone to find peace. And we don't ask things in vain. And that we ask that you guide everybody too on their journey here. So I say, miigwech, merci. Happy Pride. And I'm sorry I was sweating a bit too profusely. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Elder McGregor. And thank you all for joining us for this historic launch of Canada's first 2SLGBTQI+ action plan. And we hope to see everyone today at the parade. Thank you.
All right. I think we're going to take questions from media now. So if you guys will bear with us while we go through this important exercise in democracy.
Yes, thank you all. Last 15 minutes, so we'll start with the first reporter.
Yeah, hi, Mari Wolf from the Canadian Press. Your action plan refers to the law change on conversion therapy. And I wondered if you could say how many people have been charged since this law was changed. And additionally, if there are any plans to tighten it up, because there is some concern that people are still being subjected to it online from America and overseas.
Obviously, the banning of conversion therapy, or so-called conversion therapy, was an important moment, a moment where we continue to make sure we're protecting, particularly young people in communities where the openness and respect isn't there for the 2SLGBTQI+ members. But it's not an end in itself to simply pass legislation. There is always work to be done on further protections and further support. But I'm happy to turn it over to Minister Ian to talk about the impact that the conversion therapy ban has had in communities across the country.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, and thank you for the question. What is your name?
Mari Wolf from the Canadian Press.
Maureen, I think directly, and I don't think I'd be speaking out of turn because he's been quite public, but Matt Ashcroft lives in my riding of Toronto Centre. And Matt played a pivotal role in that he told his story. He told his story to Minister Lametti, committee across this country continues to tell his story of how he was subjected to, and he doesn't even like to call it conversion therapy, he calls it conversion practices, and what that has meant. And every day, because I talk to him often, there are good days and there are bad days, but he is most grateful that this law was passed, because what he tells me all the time is that it means that people, young people in particular, won't have to go through, in the way he went through, the pain and suffering that they do. You make a very good point with regards to online. The Prime Minister has said that there is more work to be done, and there is. This is not an open and shut case. But I will tell you, he sleeps better at night. So many others do. And I say that because the trauma, the post-traumatic stress, all of those things, after going through those practices, are very real. Struggling with mental health, very, very real. And each day where people are able to get out of bed and take a step and work past the nightmares of those practices is a good day. And Matt is a prime example of that.
Could I just ask as a follow-up? I mean, you mentioned the trauma for people who experience conversion therapy. Is some of this funding going to be to providing counselling and support? And if I can just add, could you say more about the additional criminal law reforms that you refer to in the action plan? What sort of things you're looking at?
Okay. First of all, the big part of this funding, 75% of it, goes to community organizations who are working on the ground to support members of the 2SLGBTQI+ communities, people who are suffering, people who are feeling isolated, people who are living through discrimination, intimidation, aggression, that no one should have to live anywhere in this country. And understanding that government can't nor should do everything, making sure we are empowering folks on the ground, community leaders like so many gathered here today, to step up and give that support is a far better thing than having to do it from government. Yes, it is not within our powers and shouldn't be within our powers to legislate happiness. But I know that the impact that community organizations have in making people feeling safe, included, and mostly not so alone is unbelievably important, and that's a big piece of it. But for the other elements that we're looking at, Marci.
Just want to say, Maureen, and in looking at the plan, I know that you have it, you will see that this is an all-of-government approach. So you will see, for example, that Minister Lametti and Minister Mendicino, Minister Fortier, I mean, right across government, all of my cabinet colleagues, this is an all-in approach. And so that means working with my colleagues, working with the community, as the Prime Minister reiterated, to get things done, to move things forward. This whole action plan started with listening, That's why the acronym changed, because we listened and we heard. And that 2S, Albert, moved to the front, right? Because we listened and we heard. I have the opportunity to meet with my provincial and territorial counterparts in November, and I will be tabling this with them, talking to them about this, because as the Prime Minister mentioned, provinces and territories as well have a part. But this is the first ever because we're leading. We're leading, but it is a team effort.
Hi. Christian Poslang, CBC. I want to ask the Prime Minister about the cost of living. With another rate hike expected in September, people are worried about mortgages, people are worried about the cost of living. What's your message to Canadians worried about mortgages, and is a change in the ministry part of your ongoing approach?
We have been...
Pardon me, Prime Minister, if you wouldn't mind answering in French as well as English.
we have been focused on having Canadians' backs through this pandemic, before it, but also since it. Whether it's investments were made to support families, to support seniors, to support workers. We know people are going through a difficult time right now with the rising cost of living, and we will continue to be there. We are actively working on ways to make sure that people who are most vulnerable and being hit most hard by the inflation crisis that is going on around the world, linked to Russia's unacceptable invasion of Ukraine, linked to the disruption in our supply chains that have come out of the pandemic. These are things that are hitting people hard, and we will be there to support them in any ways that we can. C'est important de reconnaître que les gens sont en train de faire face à des moments difficiles maintenant, avec les hausses du coût de la vie liées à l'inflation mondiale, l'impact de la guerre illégale de la Russie en Ukraine, l'impact de la sortie de la pandémie et l'impact sur les chaînes d'approvisionnement ont un impact à travers le monde. Oui, on peut bien dire que l'inflation et ses défis sont en train de frapper moins fort au Canada que dans certains autres pays, mais c'est pas du réconfort pour des familles qui ont énormément de peine à rejoindre les deux bouts. C'est pour ça qu'on est en train de regarder et de faire toutes sortes de choses pour appuyer ces gens qui sont les plus vulnérables aux hausses du coût de la vie, et on va continuer d'y travailler.
The Quebec provincial election is now underway. Do you have any message for your fellow Quebecers and for federal Liberal supporters in Quebec?
Democracy matters. Participating in election and voting matters. We are facing huge challenges as a world, as a democracy, as societies right now. And Quebecers need to go out and make themselves heard. That's certainly something that I'm looking forward to watch unfold over the coming number of weeks in Quebec. Je pense que c'est un moment pour se souvenir de l'importance de s'impliquer dans sa communauté et dans sa démocratie. Les élections sont essentielles. Un moment où on peut s'exprimer en tant que citoyen et choisir la direction de nos communautés, de notre pays. Et j'espère que tous les Québécois vont prendre en main leurs responsabilités de façonner un avenir qui est à la hauteur de leurs rêves et de leurs espoirs.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau, Mackenzie Gray with CTV. There are no concrete timelines attached with any of the commitments in this plan. When will the numerous promises you're making actually be fulfilled?
On the contrary, we've laid out $100 million over 5 years, with 75% of that going directly to community organizations. One of the things we saw during the pandemic, but we've seen for 7 years as a government, is one of the best ways to support people, to impact people, is to make sure that those extraordinary community organizations, volunteers, community members stepping up to be there for their neighbors and for each other is the best way. Is one of the best ways to support communities. So that's the focus of this action plan. There's a lot in it, absolutely. A lot of it is very ambitious, but we also know there's a lot more to do. But specifically on the action plan, again, happy to turn it over to Minister Ian. Marci.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. I want to make it clear that we've made sure that there are no gaps here. We're not just getting here, we have been doing the work. So when you look at the capacity funding, $55 million, the projects that are underway, the Indigenous funding that's underway, this is an addition. So this plan makes sure that there is no gaps. There are no gaps in the funding. And as the Prime Minister rightly said, we understand how important community is. We're not here to kind of be on high and say, here's what you need. The community tells us what it needs, and we act. And that's what this is about. And the other thing that I'd like to point out is, again, I talked about it a little bit before, but disaggregated data. And the money that is really allocated to disaggregated data is important because it shows us exactly what needs to be done, how we serve better. I don't even know if Faye is still here. She may be down there. There you are. Okay. So Faye and I were on a plane last night, And we had a bit of a conversation, but we were talking about disaggregated data because we saw the numbers that came out for the trans community through Statistics Canada and how important numbers are, and that we don't refer to American numbers, we don't refer to numbers in the UK, but we refer to Canadian numbers so that we understand what our communities need, who our communities are, and how we can fulfill those needs.
Switching over to Ukraine, you said that you're going to attend the G20 meeting coming up in Indonesia, despite the fact that Russia is attending. Do you have any plans to seek a meeting with any Russian officials to discuss your displeasure about what's going on in Ukraine? And can you also speak about the shelling that's going on about the nuclear plant? Are you concerned about any potential issues there?
First of all, the G7, when we gathered in June, made it very clear that we will continue to make sure our voices and our presence resonates through the G20. Attending the G20 is an opportunity to highlight that the economic challenges that the world is facing right now is, for the most part, or for a significant part, directly attributable to Russia's unconscionable, unjustifiable invasion of a peaceful, sovereign neighbor. The G20 exists to deal with global economic challenges. That's why it was started by a Canadian in Paul Martin. And there is no greater economic challenge the world is facing right now than the energy crisis, the global food crisis, the disruptions caused by Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. So that is going to be a significant topic of conversation at the G20, and we will use, as Canadians, but as a G7, every opportunity to make sure that that message is pushed through, not just to countries around the world, but to the Russian people as well, who are suffering because Vladimir Putin decided to invade a peaceful neighbor. These are things that will continue to resonate. On the issue of the Ukraine power plants, we are extremely concerned, as everyone should be, of Russia's actions that are endangering the safety not just of Ukrainians, but people all across Eastern Europe. We saw what happened when Chernobyl suffered collapse many, many decades ago. We have to, at all cost, avoid that. That's why the role of the International Energy Agency and the work that we're all doing to try and stabilize this conflict, but also ensure that there are concrete actions that do not put us at risk of, on top of everything else, a nuclear incident.
Dale Smith with Extra. This action plan was one of your election promises to be within 100 days of election. We're a little past that now. I'm just wondering if you can give us an idea of why it took as long as it did.
Absolutely, yes. In our last election, which was more than 100 days ago, we made a commitment that we wanted to move on it extremely quickly. But we also committed at the same time that it wouldn't be a made in Ottawa action plan. And as Marci pointed out, the level of feedback, of involvement, of consultation that went into this plan took us a little more time. And yeah, I think it was worth the wait because this historic first ever action plan is getting it right, even as we know there's always going to be more to do, but this is a big step that I'm incredibly happy to be able to announce alongside Marci here at Capital Pride, and I will turn it over to Marci for the final word on this.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And Dale, thank you for all your work. I always look forward to calls from you. I do. I do. And the Prime Minister is exactly right. I will sit here and take onus for a lot of it because I haven't been minister for so long. And as I said, I wanted to hear from people, Dale. I wanted to not just, talk to them on the phone. I wanted to see their eyes. I wanted to sit with them. I wanted to hear their stories. I wanted to hear what they needed. And then, speak with our team and other teams about what we could do. Really wanted to take the time to do that so that this plan reflects what the community needs. That's so important. That's everything, frankly. And so, yes, past the 100 days, but we're here.
Thank you all.
Merci tout le monde.